Alright, hello. So, this video is going to be a brief analysis of the game Hollow Knight and what I think it does successfully game design-wise. So first of all, I just want to talk about the movement. So right now I'm using my PC, and you move using the arrows, the left and right arrows. The up and down just make you look up and down, and to jump is Z and X. Now, the first time I played this game, I looked up the controls because I didn't want to go into it blind. But lucky for me, I didn't have to do that, because upon this door, you stand by it long enough and it will tell you what to do. This, I think, is a very common but also very helpful way to introduce how to use A, how to learn the mechanics, and B, how to use them. So now the player knows that they can chop down the doors. And now we have our first introduction of an enemy. 2 hits will kill it. It's the very basic starter enemy, like a Goomba. But it was placed a little bit farther to the right so that it had time to walk towards us and we had time to assess what to do about it, which is nice when you're going into a new game and you might be a little overwhelmed. But as we can tell right now, this is the very, very, very beginning level. So these enemies are going to be quite simple, which you will see. All of the movements are very smooth and quick, like the jump and especially the attack, which really give it the feel of being this kind of tiny, agile bug. And here's another example. If we hadn't looked up the controls, you fall into this ditch, you don't know how to get out, see the jump. You can see I just got hit. The time slows down. It displays quite an abrupt slashing. So this next section is also a nice area that the designers incorporated that will help teach the players without seeming to hold your hand and teach, but it definitely gives them a feel for the platforming aspect of this game. So learning how to press the buttons at the right time, drift themselves when they're in the air, stuff like that. Another good touch was that falling spike. It lets the player know that something like that can happen and is possible to happen in the future, so it's just something to keep an eye out for that. So there's another example of how there's a pop-up on this screen and teaches the player a new mechanic to heal them. The hitbox around the avatar and the enemies are definitely fair. It gets too close to you, you can definitely tell that it touched you. Another feature that really adds the intensity on getting injured is when you get down to 1 life left, you can see that your avatar starts to have these black clouds kind of around it, and then in the top left where your health is, there's also the skull is surrounded, telling you maybe you should heal up. This game is also one that really rewards player exploration, because I could have just easily jumped up like this, continued on my merry way, but going through this tunnel, able to find this money rock, which I will be able to hit. And I know I can interact with it because it stands out from the background. It looks like the grass I can cut, and it also glimmers. That's a great way to guide players, to put stuff like that down there. Here are 2 new enemies. This game does something very good that I think a lot of games do, where it introduces like 1 or 2 enemies in the very, very beginning that are kind of simpler, just so the player can get used to fighting enemies of this kind. So we had those little crawly beetles that were kind of bluish, and then the ones that look like mosquitoes that flew. So now we have this spiky dude. Two hits take him out. And this guy, who runs at us, takes 3 hits to knock him down, which tells us that the intensity of the enemies are beginning to progress up, and things are going to get a little more complicated, and we're not in beginner land anymore. And the enemies regenerate, which is good because, well, the beetle didn't, but the other one did. But this kind of a design I personally think is good because in this game where collecting the little monies, I forget what they're actually called, is important, and also collecting souls helps you to not die when you're battling enemies. It's helpful that there's regeneration so that it's easier to acquire more. So what's nice about the enemies too with these guys, or with some of the enemies, not just these beetles, but they'll get pushed back once you hit them, which is helpful because it kind of gives you just like a second to move, get out of the way, run away if you need to. Another nice little touch is you can hear humming, so that lets you know that maybe someone special is around, which is this guy. Those are basically some of the things that I think that this game does really well when it comes to design and feel. All in all, I think it's a very polished game. It's very good for those who like to just kind of do things at their own time and on their own agenda. So you could have fought that mother bug that I just tried to beat, or you could have gone to the false knight, whatever you choose. And yeah, thanks for watching. You don't really need to follow a specific route. It's kind of more of what they call a Metroidvania style of game, where it's player-led mostly, where there are some things you can't access right away, but the order that you do things in is completely up to you, which is interesting. I think it's a nice touch, especially when some people, maybe this is their first time playing, or maybe this is a run-through, or a quick run-through of it, so they can go at the pace that they want to. So this is a boss, a mini-boss, a mini-boss that will trap you in the room and until you defeat it. Something that I feel like a lot of video game players are familiar with. I should heal. But you can see they have a more difficult attack. Alright, so I beat it. See, again, I could have gone the up path or down path. I'm gonna go back up. And as you can tell, like, the enemies got a little harder as we progressed deeper down, which is very common in a lot of videos. I think I already said that. But here is this glowy, white, soothing place. And I think that this does a great job. A good example of affordance is because, I don't know, my first instinct when I saw it was, oh, this is probably going to heal me, because we just had a kind of a boss fight. They're expecting the player to be low on health, and we can associate the color white and just the kind of wispiness of everything with healing and souls and stuff like that. So you just walk in and you look exactly what you think is going to happen happens. And then we get a nice little bench. There's another great thing, that great affordance. So there are a few things about this. One, we have seen previously that we can smash statues that are in the background. And then the second thing is it has white glowy things around it, kind of very similar, in fact, to the pond that we stepped in. So by hitting this, you can assume that you will gain some soul from it. Here's an example of... I'm gonna run away for a second, but this guy, we see that he makes those big waves, and he can smash with his hammer, or club? Yeah, it's a club. And now we have this huge enemy. Oh, that attack looked familiar. Perhaps it was from an enemy that we saw earlier. And here, we have another example of a boss. Very similar to those little bugs that we've seen. and it's following its behavior, so we know what to expect. The other bugs would roam around hitting things. And now we have an introduction of more enemies. These guys. They're fairly simple. They don't really do much except like bop around.